بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. This is a continuation of your questions. We're still getting new questions in. There's one that would probably take me a long time to answer, but it should be answered, and that is what is jihad? So the literal meaning of jihad is to strive and struggle. That's the literal meaning. And in the Quran, the word jihad is used in this meaning. In Surah Al-Furqan, فَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. When the disbelievers tell you to stop inviting towards Islam and spreading the message of Allah, then don't listen to them, but rather strive against them using the Quran, a great struggle. Now remember that there are two main phases of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And similarly, there are two main phases of the revelation of the Quran. The first phase is called the Makki phase, the years in Makkah, the first 13 years that the Prophet ﷺ spent of his life at Makkah. Then he migrated and he spent, we're talking about the first 13 years as a prophet. Then the last 10 years of his life, he ﷺ spent them in Medina. That's how his life is, his seerah is divided. His life at Makkah, his life in Medina. The Quranic revelation is also divided like this. You have the Makki surahs and the Madani surahs. Makki surahs are those that were revealed before he migrated. Now, while they were in Makkah, there was no command to act in a military fashion. Rather, they were told, Kufu aydiyakum wa aqimus salah. Restrain yourselves, focus on salat, focus on doing these things. There was no permission or there was no instruction to take up arms. Now remember, jihad does not just mean to strive and struggle. It can mean that, and it does mean that, but it's not limited to that. There is another application of jihad, which means to take military action. And in the Quran, the word jihad is used in this sense in many places. If you pick up Surah An-Nisa, for example, there's a lot of detail about this. Surah Al-Anfal, Surah At-Tawbah, and other surahs, they talk about it. Initially, this permission was given, like the Quran mentions in Surah Al-Hajj. أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. Permission has been given to those who have been attacked, who have been harmed over all these years, بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا, because they have now been oppressed to a very, very far extreme. The oppression on them is no longer going to be tolerated, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of helping them. This was the permission that was granted to take up arms. Up till that point, the Muslims were not allowed to take up arms. They had to be patient. This permission to take up arms was granted in Medina. Most of you have studied seerah, are studying seerah. You know that the first major battle that the Muslims fought was at Badr against the army of Abu Sufyan, the people of Quraysh. After that, the battle of Uhud. After that, I'm talking about the major ones, the battle of Khandaq, for example, battle of Ahzab. And like this, it continued. These ones that I've mentioned, these were all attacks against the Muslims. The Muslims either preempted the attack and tried to stop it before it happened, or the attack happened and they defended themselves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped them on many of those occasions. Then there were occasions when there was an enemy that was persistent. It had become insidious. It had become such a problem and such a poison that it would not allow them to live in peace. So they took up arms and went after them, like the battle of Banu Qurayza, for example. like Banu Nadir, the battle against Banu Nadir, for example. These are battles in which the Muslims went after them, but not without reason. It was because they had caused so much mischief, and they were constantly gathering groups of people together. Imagine if there's a bully, there's somebody who was bullying you, and then someone took care of them. Maybe the school took care of them. Maybe they got suspended. But then this bully started going and getting other people after you, so that their name couldn't be pinned to it directly, but they got that friend and that friend and that friend and that friend. So the trouble isn't stopping. They're still behind it. So the school will still go after that person saying, look, you're instigating other people. So action will be taken. So both types of actions were taken in Islam. Those that went under an attack to preempt the attack, or to defend, or to go after those people that are causing trouble. Keep one thing in mind. First of all, it is every nation's right to defend themselves. No one can take that right away from them. Every country, no matter how peaceful it is, it has the right to protect itself against the advances of others that will cause trouble to it, its citizens, its properties, its interests, its economy, and so on and so forth. The other thing is that when we say the word jihad, we are not talking about one person pulling out a sword or pulling out a gun and going and attacking someone that they think is the enemy, or for reasons that they think are justified. Jihad is an institution, in the sense that this has a lot of things attached to it. Just like think of jihad as the Ministry of Defense of a country. The Ministry of Defense in a country is not a joke. Yes, all the citizens love their country, they'll stand up for their country, they'll promote their country, but citizens do not have the right to take up arms when they feel like it's justified. I usually give this example in the context of Canada and America, but I could give a similar example for, let's say, Australia and New Zealand, who happen to be very good allies, very strong allies, very good neighbors, very friendly, on good terms. But let's just say, for example, there's a group of rogue Australians who really, really hate New Zealand. I don't know, maybe they hate a product that comes from there, or they hate something that comes from there on TV, or whatever it is. They have a problem with them, they hate them, they create a movement against New Zealand, and they say, you know what, New Zealand is the enemy. And we've had enough of them, and they're threatening our way of life, and they're threatening our safety and prosperity. And as long as New Zealand exists, we can never be happy. So we're going in and we're going to attack. So they get a bunch of other people that are like-minded, they get some weapons together and they go and attack. So what will happen here is the first people to stop them will be the Australians. The Australian government will be the first to stop those people, because they do not have the right to act in the name of Australia. They do not have the authority to act on behalf of Australia or Australians, because Australians have a system in place that will decide when it will be appropriate to take military action, against whom they will take it, and how that process will happen. And there's a detailed process that governments have in place. There are many levels of governance that have to approve this, and it goes through a very tricky process, and then it's agreed upon. That's when a country takes military action. So jihad is very similar to that. Jihad is not something that, you know what, I hate so and so, I'm going to go and take action. That is why it's very important to do two things. One is that we should consider jihad as a part of Islam, a part and parcel of Islam, because it's mentioned in Quran, it's mentioned in Hadith. To say that there's no jihad in Islam is to deny a big portion of Quran and Hadith. But it's also important for us to distinguish, to separate between what the Quran calls jihad and what people might be calling jihad, but in fact it's just acts of terrorism. In jihad there is no terrorism, and in terrorism there is no jihad. It cannot be jihad and have terrorism in it, and it cannot be terrorism and have jihad in it. There are rules, just like there's rules for praying salat. How you stand up, there's faraid, there's wajibat, there's sunan, there's things that you can't do in salat. Just like that, there's detailed teachings for what you can and cannot do in jihad. So one of the things, for example, that you cannot do is you cannot go and attack civilians. You can't go. So someone who goes and sets off a bomb in a marketplace, calls it jihad and thinks they're going to be a martyr, they're not going to be a martyr. They won't be, because that's not jihad. Because that's not how Islam has instructed us to carry out jihad. So there are many things, I won't go into the details, but jihad is the ministry of defense, just like Islam has very organized systems to govern all aspects of our lives. Marriage, worship, business, family life, social life, do's and do nots, what we consume, what we can't consume. It has a detailed system of how a nation should protect itself and what defense and military action looks like. It has detailed rules for that. That is called jihad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us further understanding of deen. Of course, there's much more that you can learn about this and keep collecting information.